before you scroll, before you breathe, imagine this: the lights go out, the crowd goes quiet, and somewhere backstage a man whispers a prayer in a Filipino accent, knowing that in the next 3 minutes his entire life might change forever. Stay with me until the end of this story, because what happens on that stage doesn't just shock America, it reminds us why dreams are worth chasing. And if stories like this move you, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because moments like these deserve to be shared. He stood alone behind the curtain, fingers trembling, white jumpsuit heavy on his shoulders like the weight of every doubt he'd ever carried. His name was Marco Reyes, born and raised in a small barangay outside Cebu, where Elvis Presley wasn't just music, he was escape. As a kid, Marco used to sing "Can't Help Falling in Love" into a broken electric fan, pretending it was a microphone, while his mother cooked rice and his father came home tired from driving a jeepney all day. Neighbors laughed, not cruelly, but with that gentle disbelief reserved for children with impossible dreams. "Singer ka? Sa America pa," they'd say. "A singer? In America?" Marco would just smile and keep singing. Life didn't follow the melody he imagined. His father passed away before Marco turned 17, and suddenly music became a luxury. He worked construction during the day, sang in small bars at night, and sent every extra peso home. Elvis stayed with him through it all, on dusty buses, in crowded boarding houses, through cheap earphones playing old recordings scratched by time. Elvis wasn't just a voice, he was proof that someone poor, someone from nowhere, could become unforgettable. Years later, with help from relatives and a courage he didn't know he had, Marco boarded a plane to the United States. He arrived with one suitcase, a worn-out jumpsuit replica, and an accent people mocked before they heard him sing. Auditions were brutal. Some judges smiled politely and waved him off before the first chorus. Others told him Elvis impersonators were a dime a dozen. There were nights Marco slept in his car, wondering if the neighbors back home were right all along. Then came the audition that changed everything. A massive stage, cameras everywhere, judges already tired of the day. When Marco walked out, the whispers started immediately. The look. The suit. The accent when he introduced himself. One judge raised an eyebrow, another leaned back, unimpressed. Marco felt his throat tighten. This was the moment fear begged him to run. Instead, he closed his eyes and thought of his mother watching on a borrowed TV back home, neighbors packed into the living room, waiting. The band struck the first chord. When Marco sang, the room shifted. It wasn't perfect imitation, it was something deeper. His voice carried struggle, distance, longing. Elvis, yes, but filtered through years of sacrifice and oceans crossed. The crowd leaned forward. Judges stopped taking notes. By the second verse, someone gasped. By the chorus, people were on their feet. Marco opened his eyes and saw tears in faces he'd never met. For the first time, America wasn't laughing. America was listening. But the story didn't end there. Fame doesn't arrive gently. Overnight, Marco became the Filipino Elvis. Social media exploded, and so did criticism. Some said he didn't belong. Others accused him of stealing a legend. The pressure crushed his confidence. During rehearsals, his voice cracked. Old insecurities came roaring back. He almost quit, convinced that one viral moment didn't erase a lifetime of being told he wasn't enough. The turning point came from an unexpected place. An elderly stagehand, who'd worked concerts since the 1970s, pulled Marco aside. He said he'd once seen Elvis live. "You don't sound like him," the man said softly. Marco's heart sank. "You remind people why he mattered." That single sentence rewired something inside him. Marco realized he wasn't there to copy a legend. He was there to carry the feeling forward. On the night of the live show, the biggest stage of his life, Marco walked out calmer than ever before. He didn't imagine judges. He didn't imagine critics. He imagined home. He sang not to impress, but to connect. The performance ended in chaos, cheers, tears, judges standing, America losing it in real time. Cameras caught Marco dropping to his knees, overwhelmed, whispering thank you through sobs that felt like years finally releasing. When the results were announced, Marco didn't just advance, he became a symbol. A man from a small Filipino town, standing under American lights, proving that talent doesn't need permission or passports. Back home, neighbors cried. Kids sang into electric fans again. Somewhere, a new dream quietly woke up. And that's why this story matters. Not because Marco sounded like Elvis, but because he sounded like hope. If you've ever felt invisible, laughed at, or told your dream was too big for where you come from, remember this moment. Remember that the stage is bigger than fear, and the world is always listening when you're brave enough to sing. If this story inspired you, don't let it end here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to believe again. Because the next unforgettable voice might be closer than you think, and it might be yours. Don't blink. Don't skip. Because what you're about to hear is the kind of moment America didn't see coming and the kind of dream most people give up on way too early. And before this story ends, you'll understand why one voice from the Philippines made an entire nation lose its mind. If stories like this inspire you even a little, hit like, subscribe, and stay with us, because these are the stories that change people. The arena was loud, restless, almost bored. Another audition day, another performer chasing a dream everyone in the room had seen fail 1,000 times. When the announcer called his name, there was no roar, no anticipation, just polite clapping. A short Filipino man stepped into the spotlight, wearing a white Elvis-style jumpsuit that looked slightly too big for him. Some people chuckled. A few exchanged looks that said, "Here we go again." His name was Daniel Cruz, and he had crossed oceans to stand on that stage. Daniel grew up in Tondo, Manila, in a house where the roof leaked and the radio never turned off. His mother cleaned houses, his father disappeared before he could remember his face. Music was the only thing that filled the silence. On Sundays, Daniel would hear Elvis Presley crackle through an old AM station, and something about that voice, lonely, powerful, aching, felt familiar. Daniel didn't understand English then, but he understood emotion. He sang along anyway, mimicking sounds he barely knew, dreaming of places he'd never seen. Dreams, however, don't pay bills. By 16, Daniel was working long shifts in a factory. By 20, he was singing Elvis songs in cheap bars for tourists who barely listened. People told him to sing something modern, something Filipino, something realistic. But Elvis wasn't about realism to Daniel. Elvis was survival. Every time life tried to shrink him, those songs made him feel bigger. America wasn't part of the plan until a coworker secretly filmed him singing and uploaded it online. The video barely went viral, but it went far enough. A talent show producer saw it. An invitation followed. Daniel sold almost everything he owned to afford the trip. At the airport, his mother hugged him and whispered, "Kahit anong mangyari, kumanta ka." No matter what happens, sing. Standing on that stage, judges asked him why he chose Elvis. One smiled skeptically. Another sighed. Daniel answered honestly, his accent thick, his hands shaking. Because when I had nothing, his music stayed. The audience murmured. The band counted in. The first note changed the air. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. But it was real. Daniel's voice carried years of hunger, sacrifice, and quiet resilience. The laughter stopped. Phones lowered. By the time he reached the chorus, the crowd was frozen, caught between nostalgia and disbelief. This wasn't an impersonation, it was a confession wrapped in a familiar melody. One judge's eyes filled with tears before he realized it. When the song ended, there was a half-second of silence. Then the explosion. Screaming. Standing ovation. Judges on their feet. Daniel didn't smile right away, he looked terrified, like someone who didn't realize he was allowed to win. When they told him he was going through, his knees buckled. America didn't just applaud him. America embraced him. But the hardest part came after. Fame arrived fast and sharp. Interviews, pressure, online comments questioning his worth, his accent, his right to sing an American icon. Daniel almost broke. During rehearsals, his confidence vanished. He called his mother one night and told her he wanted to come home. She listened quietly, then said, "Anak, hindi ka pumunta diyan para maging Elvis. Stop right there. Don't scroll. Don't blink. Because what you're about to hear is the kind of moment that turns disbelief into goosebumps and silence into thunder. A moment when America expected a joke, and got a miracle instead. Stay until the very end of this story, because it isn't just about music, it's about faith, sacrifice, and the kind of dream that refuses to die. And if stories like this give you chills, hit like, subscribe, and stay with this channel, because this is where unforgettable moments live. The crowd was restless, phones glowing, judges tired. Another audition. Another hopeful face. When the announcer said his name, there was no reaction, just polite noise. A Filipino man walked onto the stage wearing a classic white Elvis jumpsuit, slightly worn, slightly faded. Some people smirked. Someone laughed under their breath. The judges exchanged looks that said they'd seen this act before. His name was Luis Mendoza, and this was the most terrifying moment of his life. Luis grew up in a fishing village in Pangasinan, where mornings smelled like salt and diesel, and nights echoed with karaoke drifting through open windows. His father was a fisherman who came home exhausted and quiet. His mother sold snacks by the roadside. They didn't have much, but they had music. One night, an uncle brought home a scratched CD of Elvis Presley. When Luis heard that voice, something inside him cracked open. It sounded lonely. It sounded strong. It sounded like someone singing their way out of a hard life. As a boy, Luis sang while helping mend nets, while walking miles to school, while rocking his younger siblings to sleep. People told him he sang beautifully, but they also told him to be realistic. Singers didn't escape villages like theirs. So Luis grew up, got jobs that barely paid, sang at fiestas and weddings, and tucked his dream away like something fragile and embarrassing. Elvis stayed with him, though, through cheap speakers, late nights, and moments when giving up felt easier than believing. Everything changed when his father passed away suddenly. Grief hollowed Luis out. Music was the only thing that filled the space. One night, singing alone, he made a decision that terrified him more than loss ever had. He would try. Just once. He borrowed money, sold what little he owned, hugged his crying mother goodbye, and flew to America with nothing but a suitcase and a voice shaped by hardship. The audition process was brutal. Hundreds were sent home. Some laughed at his accent. Others told him he was too old, too foreign, too late. Luis slept on couches, skipped meals, and nearly quit more times than he could count. But somehow, he stood there under blinding lights, heart pounding, hands shaking, while judges asked why he chose Elvis Presley. Luis swallowed hard and answered honestly. Because when my life was heavy, his songs carried me. The music started. The first note stunned the room. Not because it was loud or flashy, but because it was soaked in truth. Luis didn't sound like he was performing, he sounded like he was remembering. His voice carried years of struggle, oceans crossed, dreams delayed but not destroyed. The laughter vanished. The whispers died. One judge leaned forward, another covered their mouth in disbelief. By the chorus, the audience was on its feet, not realizing when it happened. When the song ended, Luis stood frozen, afraid to hope. Then the eruption came. Cheers. Tears. A standing ovation that felt endless. Judges called it one of the most emotional auditions of the season. Luis dropped his head and cried, not because he'd won, but because for the first time, the world heard him. But the real battle began after. Fame is loud, but doubt is louder. Online critics attacked his accent, his right to sing an American legend. Pressure strangled his confidence. During rehearsals, his voice wavered. He almost walked away, convinced the stage didn't belong to him after all. Then he remembered his father, silent and tired, listening to Elvis after long days at sea. Luis realized something important. He wasn't stealing a legacy. He was honoring it. Elvis wasn't about being American. He was about being human. On the night of his next performance, Luis walked out calm. No fear. No apology. He sang like a man who had already survived everything life could throw at him.
The audience felt it instantly. America lost it again. That performance didn't just go viral. It became a reminder that greatness can come from anywhere. Luis didn't just move forward in the competition. He became proof. Proof that dreams don't have accents. Proof that legends don't belong to borders.
Back in his village, neighbors gathered around small screens, crying, cheering, believing again.
Kids sang louder. Parents hoped harder. And that's why this story matters. Because somewhere right now, someone is being told their dream is impossible.
If this story touched you, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it. Because sometimes, all it takes is one voice on one stage to remind the world that hope is still alive and it can come from anywhere. Wait.
Don't scroll. Don't breathe just yet.
Because what you're about to hear is the kind of moment no one planned for, no one predicted, and no one could stop once it began.
A moment when America expected entertainment, and instead witnessed destiny.
Stay with me until the very end of this story, because what happens on that stage doesn't just shock a crowd, it changes lives. And if stories like this give you goosebumps, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and join this growing family that believes dreams are still alive. The theater buzzed with impatience.
Hours of auditions had drained the room.
Judges leaned back in their chairs, audience members checked their phones, and producers quietly prayed for anything memorable. Then the next name was called. A Filipino man stepped into the spotlight, wearing a white Elvis-style jumpsuit that had clearly seen better days.
It didn't fit perfectly.
Neither did he, at least not in the eyes of the crowd. A few nervous laughs rippled through the room.
Someone whispered, "Elvis again?"
His name was Ramon Villanueva, and he carried his entire past in the sound of his breathing. Ramon grew up in a crowded neighborhood in Quezon City, where space was limited but noise was constant. His mother worked overseas as a domestic helper, calling home once a week when she could afford it. His grandmother raised him, and every night she played old cassette tapes to drown out the chaos outside. One of those tapes was Elvis Presley. Ramon didn't understand the lyrics, but he understood the feeling.
That voice sounded like longing. Like someone missing home. Like someone trying to be strong for the people they loved. As a child, Ramon sang to cope with loneliness. He sang while doing homework alone.
He sang while waiting for his mother's calls. He sang into mirrors, pretending the reflection was an audience that believed in him. People told him he had talent, but they also told him talent wasn't enough.
Life proved them right. Ramon worked call center jobs, construction jobs, any job that paid.
Music stayed in the background, a quiet companion he never fully let go of. When his mother finally came home for good, older and tired, Ramon felt a responsibility settle on his shoulders. Dreams felt selfish. America felt impossible. But his mother, hearing him sing one night, said something that shook him.
Kung hindi mo susubukan, habang buhay mon dadalhin ang tanong. If you don't try, you'll carry that question forever.
That was all the permission he needed. Ramon borrowed money, packed one suitcase, and flew farther than he ever had before. In America, he felt invisible. His accent marked him. His confidence faded.
Auditions were rejections stacked on rejections.
He slept on friends' floors and wondered if courage had finally failed him. Then, somehow, he made it onto that stage. The judges asked why Elvis.
One smiled politely, already preparing to move on.
Ramon's voice shook as he answered. Because his songs helped me survive missing the people I love. The band began to play.
The first note didn't explode, it crept into the room. Soft. Honest. Raw. Ramon sang like he wasn't trying to impress anyone.
He sang like he was telling the truth for the first time in his life.
The laughter stopped.
The judges leaned forward. By the chorus, the audience was silent in that rare, electric way that only happens when something real is unfolding. When the song ended, Ramon stood frozen.
He didn't raise his arms. He didn't smile. He just waited, bracing himself for disappointment. Then the crowd erupted. Cheers slammed into him like a wave. Judges stood. One wiped away tears. Another said, "That wasn't Elvis."